The Death We Seek by Currents. This is the Connecticut Outfit's third studio album, released May 5th via Sharptone Records. The Death We Seek consists of 10 tracks, clocks in at around 40 minutes, and is the much anticipated follow-up to 2020's The Way It Ends LP. Also an album that kind of got kind of buried a little bit.
Lost in time.
Buried a bit in all the festivities that we had during 2020.
Yes, the festivities.
That's
how we all recall 2020.
That's how it's going to look in the history book. Just top header, the festivities, baby. 3 years of them.
It was a lovely 2020.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
All right, let's start with The Way It Ends. I remember enjoying that album, but not really feeling moved one way or another by it. I thought like, hey, this is pretty good, but it's probably not one of the best metalcore albums I've heard. I think it wasn't quite as... In ways, it was maybe better than their debut, but it didn't feel like it had the same punch to it.
I think when The Way It Ends released and I heard it, the way that I would rack and stack this band's material,
Rack and stack it,
was that EP that came out in the middle of the debut and the sophomore.
That EP is such a godsend. It is very good. Yeah.
Really good. And part of me thinks it's like, okay, maybe it's just because it was like just a small dose of this band at their absolute finest.
It was
like, whew.
It was also, I think it was quietly maybe the heaviest thing that band had ever put out.
Maybe, right. And then honestly, it's probably the debut for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then that second album, and it's like, it's not a knock on that record, but there were definitely a few forgettable moments that...
It's weird because I think that second album is quietly better, but that first album had like two of this band's like more iconic songs.
It's just iconic, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that maybe overshadows it in a little bit. So then we get to this third album, and where do we stand?
I was feeling pretty good about it heading into it with the singles.
Okay. So going into it,
about 3 or 4 of them.
Expectations.
Sure. And honestly, they've delivered. And
they did deliver. They delivered.
I think right now where I sit is that this is almost inarguably this band's finest release.
I'll agree with that.
From beginning to end, I am satisfied with every single song. I think that all of them punch in all the right ways. I think that this band just sounds fucking flat out good. Like, I feel like they've just really found their sound, and now we're in like the refinement era, and it's a good fucking era.
I think that's
always a good era for a lot of bands, because now it's just like, okay, well, this is what Current sounds like. I know what Current sounds like now, and it's just a matter of what level can we take it to, as opposed to like go out and keep trying to find our sound, right?
That's an interesting point. I want to circle back to that in a little bit. I came into this actually a little underwhelmed by the singles. I didn't really feel like any one particular song stood out to me. So listening to this album in a sense sort of was very fresh for me. Like I didn't have quite a strong memory of any of those songs. So it was like everything felt sort of new in a way that like made this record weirdly exciting in a way. And I kind of finished it and wondered to myself why it felt that those songs didn't really resonate with me when I heard them initially, but throughout the course of this album, they really did stick with me in a weird way though. I think this is one of those albums where you could have rolled the dice and just chose a single and it wouldn't have mattered. I think there's a certain there's like a quality control level here where every song is just kind of as good as the song that came before it. It's sort of like a net positive, net negative kind of way where it's like, I think this album lacks a wow factor, like a singular song or moment that's like, oh my fucking God, you got to go listen to this track, and the minute and a half mark is going to fucking blow your dick off sideways, and like it's going to change your life. All right. I don't think this album has that moment, but but it's got a really admirable consistency to it where it never dips below a sort of like high level of quality.
It's got a really high floor.
The first time I listened to it, that was a little bit of a disappointment. Like I walked away from it and I'm like, God damn it, Currents. Like where's the apnea on this record? Where's that moment where you're like, I let the devil in, and I'm like, God damn, like,
where's your new set list closer?
Yes, it's like I don't hear it on this album, but like as a whole, like as the full 40-minute experience, I really think it's sort of like solid in ways that are more subtle.
Yeah, and it's not like I get lost in this album in the sense that it's like it's got this real conceptual nature, and it might, but it was lost on me if it did. And it doesn't have like,
I think it has a similar conceptual nature to a lot of the metalcore albums that we discuss on this show that deals with like death and stress and anxiety and depression and all of those lovely things. And you get it just from like reading a lot of the song titles, right? Like, hey, we're living in tragedy. We're like so alone and we've got a stray guide us home, bro. It's almost like a little storybook when you start to read it out, actually.
A little bit. But like, I don't really get lost in like any small detail on here. It's just in general.
Right.
Yeah.
I go back and I listen to this album and I start picking up on little things, right? I'm like, you know, this band resists the call of the octane core that so many of their contemporaries have not been able to do, right?
No.
And we'll see if it pays off for what it's worth, because like those bands have seen a lot of success for that exact transition. But this band, like they play it a little more like honest. You know what I mean?
They subvert those expectations a little bit, and it pays off in a big way.
But they do little things. You know, it might not be Siri voice, but there is some like cool little sampling that we drop behind like a song that's like, it's subtle, but you pick it up. You know, maybe you pick it up on the second time you listen to this record. Maybe you don't get it on the first time, but it's there, right? And then you start to appreciate the other things that like, okay, maybe we don't have this big flashy moment of like, hey, build up, breakdown, call out, Siri voice.
There's definitely none of like the Siri voice, not a lot of call
feature, no features on here.
No features.
But it's like I'm paying attention and I'm like, all right, we are fucking doing some guitar work on here.
The
like
we kicks off with a fucking breakdown. Like it's just no nonsense, just right into it. Whereas every other band in this scene would be like fucking band name 2020 breakdowns. Like this band doesn't have to do a robot voice. They're just right into it. And they just they sort of like let their talent speak for itself.
They're so good at the fundamentals. And in that way, they're like, maybe they're not the most exciting band to watch, but like they are very good. You know what I mean?
And when they do get flashy, like again, it's not a breakout thing where suddenly it's an iconic song or anything, but like it really helps you appreciate the song itself. So one thing that really stuck out to me was the guitar work on this one. And like listening to it, for the most part, like the best way I can describe it is I'm really fond of how the guitarist sort of like intentionally colors outside of the line sometimes, where it's like for a second you've got your head wrapped around like the 6 or 7 seconds of a verse you've heard, and then just we go haywire on the guitar for all of 2 seconds, and it's stuff like that that keeps pulling you into what this band is doing, and it keeps you on your toes, keeps you on the edge of your seat, where you know nothing insane is happening. Like we're not building up to this massive breakdown or these fucking 48 animal noises that every other deathcore band is going to pull out.
And that's like respectfully to other deathcore bands, because actually
and I eat that stuff right off.
Yeah, that's generally what I want. I think it's credit to Currents that they're so good at writing metalcore songs that they almost don't have to do all of the extra shit to still make a really compelling record.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks volumes to the talent of this band. And that's a lot of praise. And I don't think they're perfect. I think that the choruses across the board on this record, none in particular are really like the breakout, like sing-along melody. Like none of them are really hit In a way that's maybe a little underwhelming. It's not that they're bad. It's just like that feels like a moment where something might really stand out and then it doesn't. And then like lyrically, this is almost one of those like this is one of those bands where lyrically, like I almost don't even like notice the lyrics. You know what I mean? It's like they're not great, but they're not bad.
Yeah,
so they're like
there's a little bit of opportunity with the lyrics. I found
there's opportunity to impress, but I don't think they ever disappoint. Does that make sense?
not to like a really embarrassing degree. But
Last band we were talking about had those moments where it's like, man, that one should have been left on the cutting room floor.
Right.
I don't hear that here. I just like, I think that's maybe if we're talking about where is there room for improvement? Okay, maybe a little sharper lyrics. I think that we haven't really like written a hook that like really like helps speak to Brian's clean singing voice. You know what I mean?
So that's something I wanted to mention too. It's like you say that, and the singing's actually surprisingly impressive on this album.
It's good. Where's the hook though that really services it?
What's
you know what I mean?
Sell that,
right?
Because otherwise, it's like you're right. It's like you sound that good, and for what? You know, and don't get me wrong.
And for what?
And for what? What a waste.
This?
And it's not a waste, but
not at all.
There was definitely like, I wish there was an emphasis on finding that hook at a certain point, and that I really do wish this band found it, and we had our new iconic current song.
Right.
But like, I think we've got a really solid album in the place of that, and I'll settle for that. Like, I'll take that.
Yeah, this just feels like a band who's like much improved from their 2020 release. Like this feels like a much better version of The Way It Ends, which was a pretty decent record, and this is the one that I'm going to go back to, not that one.
Without a doubt. And granted, like I'll still return to a song or two on The Way It Ends, but this is the new Currents album for me. Like this is the one that when I close my eyes and think about Currents, it's the artwork for this record's going to pop into my mind.
But what's exciting is I think I hear this record and I almost immediately think to myself, man, that 2025 release is going to be a masterpiece. Like if this is where we went after that last record, right? If we build on this, we'll be perfect. We'll be one of the faces of the genre.
They're on like put a fucking graph behind us. Perfect incline right now.
This is a 4-star release for me. I think it is very good. I think it's one of the better metalcore records I've heard this year, and I think it's the best release we've gotten from Currents.
Yeah, I'll go with a 4 too. I like that. Feels right. Go check it out. The Death We Seek by Currents.